and welcome to episode 72 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, and you can find me on Ravelry as mmonska and on Instagram as Stitched in Sweden. This week I have a full-on FO show for you. I have so many projects that I have been working on for the past couple months, and many of them are finished. A couple of them are very close to being finished, and I don't actually have that many new works in progress, but for you I guess they'll be new. So it will be also a mixture of knitting and sewing throughout, and I have some life updates as well because it's been a few months since I last recorded. So let's just get started right away with a sweater that I talked about last time briefly, and that was a secret at the time, but now I can share that I was a preview knitter for Brooklyn Tweed, which is a new program that they're trying out that is similar to how, I mean, I don't consider Brooklyn Tweed super commercialized, but it is more commercialized than just an independent designer because it's a company designing, even though it's made up of many independent designers. I guess they're not independent because they design under the brand. Anyway, so they have a new program called the Preview Knitting Program, which they asked me to be a part of, and this is a way that some knitters receive the pattern ahead of time for an upcoming collection, and then they have the chance to knit some of the patterns in the collection, or just one of the patterns in the collection, and then when the collection comes out, there are already some finished projects on Ravelry and on Instagram. So I knit the Kirigami Sweater, which is a pattern by Gudrun Johnson, and this is it. I knit it in Fru Valborg yarn in the golden color, and this is a pretty good color representation of it. You can see that it has this nice textured origami-ish pattern at the top, and it is a long sleeve, full length pullover. And I have a couple of pictures of me wearing this on my Instagram. And this was a really enjoyable knit. I was knitting it kind of in secret, as you know, and I had to rip back a couple of times, so this ended up taking me quite a while, and because I had a deadline, even though I had plenty of time to knit it, ripping out and starting parts over again was a little bit stressful. But in the end, it's done, and I think it turned out really nice, and it was really fun to knit this for Brooklyn Tweed. I knit it for myself actually because I get to keep it, which is different than sample knitting, for example, when you would knit the sample and then send it off to the company and they keep it. But the reason why I had to re-knit a little bit is because I started with the sleeves because I thought I was being super smart and avoiding the sleeve problem, which I often have at the end when that's what you have left to knit and you don't want to knit the sleeves. I thought I was avoiding that problem by starting with the sleeves, but by the time I had, this was knit from the bottom up, by the time I had knit the body, attached the sleeves, and knit a good part of the yoke, it was pretty clear to me that I was going to run out of yarn. So I ripped back to the sleeves and ripped the sleeves back to the elbows, and then knit the sleeves a bit tighter so they were more fitted around the upper arm, which was actually how I prefer the fit anyway. But yeah, and I ended up doing the yoke pattern with one full repeat less than the smallest size in the pattern. So that was some of the changes that I did. And I also added a little bit of waist shaping to the sweater. So this is it. and you can see some pictures of it on my Instagram. Another sweater that I finished since the last time is the Mossbank Sweater, and this is it. This is another Brooklyn tweed pattern, and I made this using 2 colors of Brooklyn tweed shelter. The newsprint is the black and white marled yarn, and then the collar and the cuffs are in fossil, which is kind of natural off-white color, and it's the same natural off-white that is marled with the darker yarn in the main body. And this is just a nice simple pullover shape. I still need to block this again. I blocked the pieces individually after I made each piece, since it was knit in pieces. I blocked each piece before I stitched it together. And then when I was finished with the whole thing, I ironed it on a wool setting with some steam, but I haven't blocked the whole thing again, and I need to do that still. That is the Mossbank Sweater, and I received that yarn from my parents this Christmas. So I actually finished knitting that whole sweater in about 5 days, and then seaming it together took a while. So then it was finished, and the knitting was finished in 5 days, and then I think I took about another month or so to finish the seaming. But now it's finished, mostly, except I still need to block it. Another finished knitting project that I am super excited about is this baby blanket, and this is a baby blanket for my very good friend. This is the Ciri blanket by Clara Linea. I think she's a Swedish designer. The pattern was in English and maybe also in Swedish, I'm not sure. Probably in Swedish too. And I actually knit this in the Brooklyn tweed loft yarn in the Foothills colorway that I was planning on, and told you last time that I was going to make the Bell sweater, which I kept calling the Foothills sweater, which it wasn't. It's the color of the yarn that's Foothills, which is a super nice light green color with kind of some brighter chartreusey yellowish green bits and some little gray bits and black parts too in it. And this baby blanket is this long. I have not blocked it yet, but I have also ironed it, which is something that I like to do with 100% wool yarn. You have to be really careful when you do that with superwash yarn because it melts. But with 100% wool, you can use a wool setting on your iron and give it a nice steam, and it's similar to blocking, but it still doesn't replace blocking. Like, I definitely will block this also because the Brooklyn tweed yarn has a bit of spinning oil in it, and like every time I wash it why did I just do that? Every time I wash Brooklyn tweed after knitting with it, the water is pretty dirty. So I definitely will wash this, especially because it's for a baby, and I know it will just soften up a lot more. It's pretty soft right now, but even the difference from when I just knit it straight and then after I had ironed it, it really blossomed a bit and got softer and just like a bit more drapey. Like it has a nice drape to it, and I think it will be really sweet baby blanket. And yeah, it was an easy pattern. At first it was a little bit tricky, but to get this stitch that makes this nice like leaf pattern down. You may have seen this pattern before in a cardigan. There's a cardigan that the same designer has made that has a nice leafy yoke, and then the rest of it is stockinette. And that's, I think it's called the Ciri cardigan or pullover or something like that. And this is the blanket version. So I did cast on I think maybe 2 repeats less than the pattern called for, or maybe 1. I think I had a little bit of a wider gauge, and I was liking this fabric, so I stayed with it. And I used 4 and maybe 1/4 or 4.5 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Loft for this blanket. I knit mine in more of a rectangle shape, even though the original pattern is a square. So that is this baby blanket, and I'm super excited to give this to my friend who is having her first baby. When I finished the Ciri blanket last night, I was in the middle of watching a movie with Thomas, so I needed to cast something else on immediately because I really can't just sit and watch a movie and not do anything. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to cast on some baby socks. These are just about the cutest thing ever. They look kind of funny right now. First of all, I haven't blocked them at all, so they are kind of a wonky shape. When I say block, I also mean just like giving them a nice soak and wash, and then just kind of laying them out to dry flat. It really helps to even out the stitches a bit and just give it a better shape. These I think will always have a little bit of a funny shape because they are ribbed, so this cuff, like if you put a fat little baby leg in it, I think it looks a little bit more like a sock, unless like, I mean, this looks like it's gonna be super long, but this is the baby mitten sock, which I first heard about from Tabby and Rachel on the Hey Sister podcast, and they said that this sock fits and stays on their babies, so I thought this would be a good pattern. It's a free pattern. On Ravelry, when you look it up, it says that this pattern is no longer available, but when you click on the link where it says this pattern is available for free, or this pattern was available for free, there still is a link, and the link still works. It links to a blog post that has all the instructions for the sock. So I'm not really sure why it says that, but in case you're looking for it, it's still there. And basically you cast on 32 stitches for these little guys, and it has all the other instructions, so you can look if you're curious. But total, this took me 11 grams of fingering weight yarn, and I think they're just really sweet. So these took me about an hour to make each, and this pair I knit one at a time on a Haya 2mm US 0 needle with a 40-inch cable, which is pretty excessively long to do magic loop for these little guys. So for the second pair, I decided to knit them 2 at a time, and it's going a lot faster because each time that you have to move the needles around, you're knitting on 2 socks. So these 2 little baby socks next to each other is the equivalent of 1 human adult sock. I mean, of course a baby's also human. Okay, that was weird. Right now I'm knitting the second pair, and I have it just as one right now because when I knit socks 2 at a time, I don't usually do the heel flap and gusset 2 at a time, just because there's like so much going on at that part. So I moved the stitches, I moved the second sock onto some double pointed needles, and I'm working them. I'm still like making sure that they will end up even at the end, because I'll do 2 or 4 rows on one sock, and then I'll do those same 2 or 4 rows on the next sock. This is the second pair, and I decided to do a little cable on these ones. It's basically a 2x2 rib, and every other rib I have a little cable, just 1/1 cable every 5th row, I think I have it. And I'm just on the heel flap for these. So this is some, I'm pretty sure it's Madeline Tosh Merino Light. And I usually, like, I would never use, I don't think I would ever use a single ply yarn for socks, but for newborn socks, like, they're not gonna walk on these socks. So I think this is a perfect time to use some single ply yarn that I just have little bits left over, and it just makes like a really cute little dainty sock. So here's the other one. I've got 2 of these guys going, and they're just super quick and really sweet little socks, so I think that will be a nice little gift as well for this new baby. I told you it was going to be an FO show, and it continues for a little while, so it's just because I haven't podcasted in a little while and these projects have been piling up for a bit. I finished my Emily's Favorite socks for myself, and this was a really nice pattern. I also made my mom a pair from some Fru Valborg yarn in the moss color, I think it was. They were green, and I don't know if you ever actually saw them on my podcast because I needed to send them to her. And these are super nice. I'm really happy with how they turned out. This yarn is from Jenny, what is it called? It's called Lul Jenny Penny or something, and she's a Swedish dyer, and I bought this yarn at the Stockholm, I don't know what to call it now, but it's like the sewing and knitting festival here in October. I bought this, and there's another one coming up, I think it's next weekend in February. I did a tubular cast on for these socks, which is not something I usually do for socks, but it looks really nice. And I linked to the tubular cast on that I used in my Ravelry project for these socks. This is a 3x1 rib, and it's a 1x1 rib on the top and then a 3x1 rib. And I followed the pattern pretty much exactly. I cast on a larger number of stitches. I think I have 72 stitches on these than I usually do, but what's nice about that is that then when you wear these ribbed socks, the ribbing isn't like totally stretched out, so it stays like in this nice, I don't know, just I like it. So I haven't worn these yet, but I think I will definitely be wearing them now that I showed them here. Usually I don't stop myself from wearing things before I've shown them on the podcast, but these just seem like so pristine and nice. I've just been enjoying them. Yeah. But I like the colors too. It has like a nice gray and orange. This was like a, I think it was called like rust and stuff. Just to tell you also what I'm wearing, this is a Blackwood cardigan, which is a pattern from Helen's Closet. And I made 2 of these at the same time right before Christmas, I think, and I sent one to my sister. It's snowing outside and it's sunny at the same time. So this Blackwood cardigan is the 3rd one that I've made, and it has some, I decided to do this one with the slits open on the side, so that's how that looks. I really like this one, how it turned out. It's in a rib knit, which is maybe not as stretchy as it would ideally be for this pattern. The elbows get a little bit stretched out because they don't bounce back so much, and the sleeve cups also are a little bit stretched out. I've worn this a couple of times since I washed it, so when I wash it, it usually springs back a little bit, but I really like it. And this is a pattern that, like I said, this was my 3rd and 4th time making it, and I really enjoy it, and I wear it all the time. So definitely a good wardrobe staple, and my sister also said she really likes it, so that's a plus too. Another thing that I sent my sister that I don't have anymore, obviously, and I never showed you, is that I made her 2 Hollyburn skirts for Christmas and her birthday, and one of them was in a gray wool with a kind of whitish plaid on it, or I don't know if it's plaid, it's more like grid, I would say. Like it's gray on the back and then it has like big squares, but like grid style of kind of a creamy white. And not harsh white, like it still is kind of muted into this gray. And then I also made her a green one out of some Atelier Brunette crepe in this green color. It was more of a moss green that she came out with right around Christmas. The other big projects that I finished since the last time are one coat and most of another coat. So I have talked before about my first attempt at the Kelly Anorak, which is a pattern from Closet Case, which now I realize is not called Closet Case Files, that's the name of her blog. And I made one up before, and the shoulders were just too small for me. So since then I have made a second version, and I did a broad shoulder adjustment on this pattern. And it's really 95% finished. I only need to attach the snaps down the front and on the sleeves to finish it off. So here it is. And this is lined. It has it's a raincoat outer fabric, and it has the lining is this quilted lining, so it's kind of thicker. I have my what's it called, drawstring encased in some metallic black and gold linen bias binding, and this is what it looks like. So I still need the snaps on this part here, and I need the little toggle. I think I need to shorten these a little bit and then put the toggles on them. And also on the sleeves I need to do the straps. So this is it. It fits me well on the shoulders. There's also a hood, and I really like it. I think it's going to be a nice coat to have. It goes down over my butt, as you can see. For this pattern, I ended up lining the whole coat in this quilted fabric, including the hood and the sleeves. And if I were to make this if I were to make this Kelly coat for the third time, I think I would use a lighter weight fabric. I don't mean lighter weight fabric actually, I mean lighter lining fabric, because it is a bit on the bulky side. I had originally planned to make this version, which is the unlined version, but it's underlined. There's blog posts on this on Closet Case Files if you would like to look at that, which is, yeah, the blog, like I said. So I did the underlining version, which doesn't use the lining extension pack. I had done the lining extension pack on version number 1 that I did. The difference in using the lining package is that the sleeves are slightly wider and are meant to accommodate a lining, which is really smart. I didn't do that on the first time when I used the lining package. Otherwise, I did the normal sleeves, and I said to myself at that point, if I do this again, when I do this again, I should use the lining package sleeves like it calls for in the pattern when you line it. I forgot to do that, and I had already cut out my fabric and I didn't have enough to cut it out again. So the sleeves are on the snug side, especially when I'm like bending my elbows. It's tight around the elbows. They were even tighter before, and I let out the seam allowance a bit on the sleeves. It's definitely still wearable, and I will wear it once it's finished, but it's something to keep in mind for next time. I think if I ever make the Kelly again, which I really would like to, and this time I would like to make it in a twill or cotton drill, I think it's called, fabric, which is a fabric that I have for my trench coat, for example, some fabric like that. I will make it unlined probably and have it more as like a spring coat that I can throw over. It's a big project, I'm not gonna lie. There's a ton of pieces to cut out. It takes a lot of time, especially when you do it with the lined version, because you have to cut out basically twice the number of pieces because you have all the lining pieces and then all the outer fabric pieces. So it's quite an involved project. I'm really happy with how it came out though, because it looks like a finished coat. Like, it has a lot of elements of what you expect in a ready-to-wear coat, and that's something I really like. But yes, very involved and takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and it's getting easier now that I did it the second time, so I think third time might be the best time. But I might wait for a while too before I do the third version, if I do that, like maybe after I make my trench coat. Another coat that I finished since the last time is my Chloe coat, which is a pattern from Sew Over It that they offer as an online class. And I talked a bit last time about how I was rather disappointed with the class because I don't think I learned a lot in particular by taking the class, but that was the only way that the pattern was offered. So I had to take it that way if I wanted the pattern. I still feel that way now when it's finished. I don't think that you gained a ton from taking it as a class. I think it could have been equally well explained in a video tutorial or in picture tutorials as the Kelly anorak was detailed on the Closet Case blog. But all that said, I am still pretty happy with how this coat turned out. It has some fuzz from my other coat on it right now. So I'll just show it to you. I used an emerald green, or forest green I guess, Mitten wool from Sew Over It, and I used I think it's viscose green lining, which was a very similar green as the coat. Originally I was going to go with a crazy lining, but I thought this just has a nice classic finish and looks nice, so that's what I decided to do. And I lined the lining, if that makes sense, with thin slate, which was this insulating fabric from 3M, I think. And this zips up all the way. That's what it looks like in the front. The shoulders fit well. This sticks out a little bit. I'm not super pleased with that. I don't really want to put a closure there because that interrupts it when it's open. I do find that I prefer to wear this coat open, which is kind of defeats the purpose of having this super warm underlining, but yeah, it fits better open, or I just like it's more comfortable when it's open. But here it is. Hopefully it's coming up. You can see my bust darts and sleeves. This is the bottom, and I did a little pleat in the pockets. The original pattern just had flat pockets. But yeah, that is it. And there was a little bit of drama with this coat. So I prefer to have it like open like this. Just, yeah, I don't know. There was a little bit of drama with this coat because I finished it. I took pictures of it which are on my Instagram. And then I was looking through the pictures and I realized, oh my gosh, on the pictures where I had the coat closed, the fronts didn't line up. So I was pretty devastated because I had just finished this coat that took hours and hours and hours, and like the fabric was expensive. I mean, it's wool fabric and you need kind of a lot of it. So it was like definitely an investment in the coat. And then the fronts didn't line up and I was just convinced that I would never be able to fix it. And that it was like too many steps back to try to fix it, and that I hadn't realized at the time. So after leaving it alone for a weekend, I came back to it and had thought about it a bit, how I could fix it, and I ended up being able to fix it, which involved unpicking part of the bottom and folding up one side a bit more and restitching it. It was pretty easy to fix, actually. But I was just like, I couldn't think about it. It was, yeah, I was being dramatic, but it was also kind of traumatic. So this is it. I'm happy with how it turned out, and it was a nice first coat project. I ended up looking up a lot of details about how to make it, particular details for coats on the Closet Case website for her tutorial for the Clara coat, which is another wool coat. But I just think there was a lot more detail there than there was even in this paid class, and those Clara coat tutorial and posts are free. I also put my tag in here, which is actually my knitting tag, but I think that it looks nice in my coat, and yeah, happy with how it turned out in the end. So I warned you that this was going to be the FO show, and it continues. I think this is the project that I'm most excited about since I last recorded, and it's actually a project that I don't want to say it's my favorite make ever, but it's close. I can't think of one right now that I like more. If you ever catch me on Instagram stories, I don't do it that often, but this was a project that I shared on Instagram stories right as I was doing the finishing touches of it. And this is my, I think it's called the Raisins Backpack, and it's a pattern from Noodlehead. And this is it. Right now it has a pillow in it because that gives it a nice shape. So this backpack is just so, I don't know, professionally finished, and it just has really nice details, and I just really love it. So I can go through a couple of the things that I like about it. It has gold findings on it, and it has leather details. The zipper is gold and black also. You can see the lining fabric here. I really like this outer fabric, which was totally lucky find at Stuff and Steel, which is a fabric and yarn shop, a craft shop, I guess you could say. I would say it's somewhat similar to Joann's if you're in the US, but it's like a nicer version of Joann's. I really like Joann's fabrics, and I find a lot of stuff there that is nice and useful. I don't always like their fabric selection, and Stuff and Steel has a really nice fabric selection. But it's similar to Joann's in that they have a lot of different crafts, supplies for a lot of different crafts, and it's kind of, I don't want to say like entry-level crafting, but it is more commercialized in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense. It doesn't matter. Anyway, just in case you don't know what Stuff and Steel is. Because I think they have it in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, the UK, and maybe Germany. I'm not sure. But yes, this is the Range Backpack by Noodlehead. I changed a few things. I made the straps a little bit wider because I noticed in some of the pictures that the models had, it looked like the straps were too narrow, and knowing me and knowing that I have a wide back, I figured that I could have the straps a little bit farther apart. It's still snowing. So this outer fabric is from Stuff and Steel. It was a total steal. That was really cheesy. But I got this for 1.5 meters of this outer fabric for 29 crowns, which is like maybe $4, $3. And it's like, at first I thought it was gray because I thought it was a white and black fabric, this texture. I'm definitely not gonna be able to see it, but I thought it was gray, but actually I think that it's white and navy blue. Anyway, the overall read is obviously gray, and I used a heavyweight black canvas for the bottom. But yeah. The leather I got from a local leather shop that my friend knew about and we went to one day. And I had sewn on this strap the wrong direction. So if there's any like tiny complaint that I have about this pattern, it's that the instructions for how to sew on this strap and this top hook were less clear than the rest of the pattern, which was very clear and very detailed. But for these straps, I think part of the reason why it was unclear is because in the pattern you actually make all of these straps and the back straps with fabric rather than using leather, or this is kind of like it feels like a seatbelt material. So I guess it was the same on both sides, but like my leather has a right side and a wrong side, and so it wasn't clear in the pattern which direction should be facing up. So I ended up sewing on this piece the wrong way because I sewed it with the right side facing up. But if you think about it, when this is flapped down and this is inserted into the closure, then most of the part that shows is this side, and before it was the wrong side. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but I showed then on my Instagram stories that it was the wrong direction, so I ended up undoing this top stitching here, pulling it out, and flipping it around, which took about 2 seconds. So that was good. Like I said, I have a pillow in here right now because I think it gives it a nice shape for showing. And I also have my glasses and my wallet in here. I used this backpack when I went to work the other day, so here's the inside. And also in here I have a pocket with the Rifle Paper Co. canvas, which is like really the last part of this fabric that I have. The front pocket is also lined in this fabric on one side of it. So if you want to make a backpack, I definitely recommend this pattern. At first I wasn't totally sure how I felt about just having a flap like this because, I don't know, I was worried about weather and like rain and snow getting in there. But I still like it. I think it looks nice. It came out well. So yeah, really happy with how that came out. And compared to the Nizo craft bag that I made last time, that green canvas purse bag, this one was way simpler and came together more quickly. I think one of the reasons it came together particularly fast for me was because I used straps for the shoulder straps and for the leather closures on the front rather than using fabric. That would have taken a bit longer because you have to sew the straps then. So having pre-done straps was quicker. but all the pieces are you're just working with rectangles and straight lines, and yeah, it's really a simple construction. Comes together, it's nice and clean, and it just looks great. So yeah, really excited about that one. And I guess I can share now one of the reasons why I bumped this up in my project list is because I got a new job, and my other backpack that I've been using for the last 2.5 years is a backpack that has the logo of my previous job and school on it. So I felt like it was time to have a nice new backpack, like a grown-up backpack, that just, I don't know, I think it just looks super nice and I'm excited about it. And I think that's a good way to start a new job. So I will start that on March 1st. And I'm working for a publishing company called Taylor & Francis. They publish academic journals and books, actually, but the Stockholm office just works with journals. And specifically with health and wellness journals. So that's what I'm doing. That's my new job. Starting soon. So yeah, wish me luck. I just wanted to ask if anybody is going to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival or was planning to go and is no longer going, so they have an extra ticket. If you could let me know, that would be awesome. I'm not going to be able to go this year, but it's for a friend who would love to not have to stand in line at the beginning if anybody has an extra ticket that they already bought. So let me know. Thanks. But to share a couple of last projects with you, I'm making another blanket for the new baby that my friend is having, and this is the Ziggurat mini quilt, which is a pattern from Nightingale Quilts, I think. I bought the pattern through Craftsy. And the original pattern is for a mini quilt that ends up being 18 by 18 inches, which is quite small, like something that you would only have for maybe like almost like a placemat kind of thing, or a wall hanging, I would say. I'm not really sure what you would use that small of a quilt for, but it seems like so small of a quilt that it would be maybe a square in a larger quilt or something like that. So anyway, I decided to take that pattern and double everything to make it twice as large. So my quilt is approximately 36 by 36 inches and is more of the size of a baby quilt. And I have just the top part of the quilt finished. And here it is. Don't know if I can get the whole. So you can get a feeling of how big it is. Of course, when I doubled everything in the quilt, I forgot that that also means that I doubled the seam allowances. So instead of having a 1/4 inch seam allowances, which is what I would usually use for a quilt, this quilt has 1/2 inch seam allowances, but it's okay. If I had only been using these half triangle square things, then I would have still been able to sew with 1/4 inch seams, but because I have some flying geese, which is this one, these two squares, rectangles, because I have that pattern, it was more specific that it needed to, I mean, I couldn't have just sewn a 1/4 inch, like it wouldn't have worked out for that part, because from this distance, from the tip of this point to the edge of the fabric is a 1/2 inch. So I would have had to do it differently, and I didn't think about that when I doubled everything. But it didn't matter because it still came out twice as big, or I guess it's kind of like 4 times as big. Anyway, if I hadn't doubled everything, the quilt would have only been a size, like it would have, the full quilt would have been this size. Quarter. 1/4 of the full quilt now. If that makes any sense. I realize that my chair is really squeaky. Maybe I need to tighten it a little bit. So that is the quilt top for that quilt finished, and I think that I'm going to use this Atelier Brunette fabric, which is an abstract print, for the backing. It's a really pale pink, and it has little mustard flecks as well as really light blue flecks and white. I think this will go well with this fabric and kind of stays with the more geometric look of the ziggurat quilt. This baby will have kind of a desert chic or Aztec theme to her nursery, so I think that this kind of geometric quilt will go well with that theme. So I just need to finalize my decision on using this as the backing, and then I have the wadding or the batting for the inside, and I just need to put it together and stitch it up. So yeah, that is a work in progress that came together really quickly to do the top of the quilt. That's the smallest quilt I've ever made, and it was pleasantly surprising how quickly the quilt top came together on that. So the last project that I'm currently working on is going to be a gift for my niece and nephew. I'm making 2 ringer tees, which is a pattern from Brindle and Twig, and it's a free pattern that they have for just basically for a basic t-shirt pattern that has a crew neck with cuffs at the sleeves and at the hem. And I'm making it in a sweatshirt fabric so that it's, yeah, like a sweatshirt for them. It is Tira's birthday on next weekend is her birthday. So this is going to be a present for her birthday, and I'm also making one for her brother just to give them something each. And it's not necessarily a birthday present, but it's just something that I wanted to make, and now was a good time to give it to them. So I'll show you the fabric for that. I cut out the one for the smaller pattern, which is for the girl, and she is the one who's turning 3. So I cut out the size 3/4 tee. And this is the body of it. None of it's sewn yet, it's just cut. So some of these circles, like this one, is metallic, and then these ones are just yellow. But yeah, I don't know if you see that it's metallic really. In person you do. There's also sleeves for this, but they're just on my desk behind me. And then I'm going to have this mustard yellow cuff ribbed fabric for this sweatshirt. So that's how that one's gonna be. And then for Theodore, he turned 5 in September, right before our wedding. And for him, I'm going to use this black sweatshirt, which has little white flecks in it. And I think it looks kind of like the sky, like with stars in it. And I'm going to have this slightly marled creamy gray for the cuffs. So I still have to, I've only cut out the ribbing parts for his, and I still need to cut out the body pieces. Now my chair is really bothering me. I need to get the screwdriver out. So that's going to be the ringer tee, and yeah, I think it will be a quick project. It doesn't use that much fabric, and I think they will like them. It's just like little fluffy snow outside. Other than that, I don't have that many projects on the go currently. I have Thomas's Citadel pullover that I'm making, which has not gotten any progress made on it because I basically knit that whole baby blanket instead. And that's what really has been taking up all of my knitting time lately, is the baby blanket. But I wanted to get it finished so that my parents can bring it back with them. They're coming to visit at the end of August, end of April. So that they can bring it back to the States and ship it to my friend from their house. So I'm gonna work on the quilt next probably, and I have a friend coming over soon in half an hour or so, and we'll probably knit together for a bit and plan our projects. Yeah, upcoming. Otherwise, I really want to make the ginger jeans, and in the month of February, Heather Lou, who's Closet Case owner, is having I think it's called No Fear Jeans Month or something like that, and I just want to make my jeans because I've already basically cut out a pair of kind of my 12, which I don't think I'll actually finish them up because I'm not super pleased with the fabric, but I have my fabric and I have all my notions and findings and metal parts for the jeans, and I just really need to cut them and sew them up. So no excuses. I'm gonna make it happen this month. Otherwise, upcoming, I'm also going to be making the little pick-me-up baby carrier, also for my friend. This is what it looks like, and she picked out a really pretty fabric for that I will pick up soon, and I think that's going to be a fun thing to sew, and just like a really practical thing to have also. So those are my main sewing plans probably for the rest of February. Get that quilt done, sew my jeans, and start that baby carrier. So I think I'll have just a quick little life update now after I charge my battery. So now for a little life update. It's been a couple of hours since I recorded the rest of the episode. My friend came over and we had a nice afternoon of knitting. I finished my little pair of socks that I was working on. So now I have 2 pairs of socks for the baby. And here they are. These are the ones with the little cabling. Turned out pretty sweet. So yeah, but on to life update. So as I mentioned earlier, I have a new job that's starting next week, and that's why I made a new backpack, one of the reasons. And so I got a new job in February and starting in March, and in January Thomas and I bought our first apartment. So we will be moving out of this apartment that we've now lived in for pretty much exactly 4 years. In March we moved in 4 years ago, and we will be moving in June or July. Well, definitely before, I guess we'll move out of this one at least before July starts. We can move into our new place in June, and we're planning on doing a little bit of renovation of the kitchen, but it is a 2-bedroom apartment, and we have a living room and a kitchen and a balcony and windows on 3 sides, and yeah, I think it's gonna be really nice. So that is pretty exciting. And yeah, otherwise I've just been enjoying a lot of time making things, and I've been feeling really motivated and inspired to make all the things. So I've just been kind of embracing that, which unfortunately has meant that I haven't podcasted very much. But yeah, I think it's also just harder in the winter to podcast. But right now it's really dark outside and my light is looking pretty good, I think. So I think I will I'm going to try to podcast a little bit more regularly, even if it's not for a large episode, just so I don't end up with one of these episodes where I feel like it's just showing all the FOs. So anyway, I would prefer to have episodes where I can go a little bit more into detail about things that I changed in patterns and yeah, like modifications that I made, or just some more details about how I found the pattern and things like that. So that's kind of my hope and plan moving forward, but we'll just have to see how it goes. And yeah, thank you for watching. Thanks for coming back, and happy knitting and happy sewing until next time. Bye!